This is the Good Neighbor Podcast, the place where local businesses and neighbors come together. Here's your host, Jim Schaller.
Good day. Today we have podcast episode number 7, and today we have Mike Gavala from G3 Catering. Mike, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, pleasure. Always good to meet new people out here in the community. So
yes.
How about we start off? You share a little bit about G3 Catering and what you guys do.
So we're a caterer here in Fort Myers. We've been here for probably going on about 28, 29 years. And, we specialize in weddings, events, galas, pretty much off premise. We do have our own venue, a wedding venue off of Corkscrew, which is a barn wedding venue on 35 acres. And, we do everything from, private wine dinners up to, 600, 700, 800 person galas for sit down dinners.
Wow.
So, yeah.
It's pretty involved. So how did you get involved in the event industry?
I'll have to give you the Cliff Notes version on that,
right,
because that's been about 40 years in the making.
Wow.
Actually, over 40 years, probably coming up on 45 years. I grew up in northern Jersey, and I lived down the street from my uncle's catering company, and he had his own hall and all of that. And at a young age of like 13, I would go down there and hang out, and of course, washing dishes and playing with the sprayer was a major fun factor there. But it just enamored me of these weddings that we used to do and events and everything. We're looking at weddings back then, 250 people, beautiful cakes coming from, bakeries, full bands, and just all this excitement going on. And I never really wanted to do anything else since, growing up in that atmosphere. So that was, at 13, that was 45 years ago. Wow. And I attended a culinary school with the hopes of when I got out of there, I would work my way into, this catering company.
Right.
And at that point in time, family just was not ready to give it up yet. And I was ready to go. I mean, I'm fresh out of school and I'm like, I want my own business and I'm ready to, hit headstrong into this. So I actually went, we had a place in South Jersey, and I bought an Italian deli down there. With premise of doing off-premise catering, and that just grew and grew and grew. I met my wife, and we had one heck of a business up there until we got married, and we had the opportunity to move here and take about a year off from the hectic, being hectic up there of business and employees and everything going on. So we sold that to move down here to relax a little bit. And within about 8 months, I bought a restaurant, and we were up and running again. So,
oh boy,
with the restaurant, we were still doing catering and all of that, and then we ended up having kids, and sold the restaurant, and pretty much just focused on the catering end of it. And my wife is a big backbone of the catering, of our catering company. She pretty much handles everything from start to finish of speaking with our clients. And that's where we are today. We're pretty much, Fort Myers, Lee County, one of the top caterers here in this area. And we really enjoy what we do.
That's a big part of it. You really need to enjoy what you do. And it's a great industry. You meet a lot of great people in the industry, and you do a lot of fun events. And, you mentioned
it's a very stressful industry.
Yeah, that too. I've been involved a little bit on my end too, but more on the corporate event side of things. And
okay,
yes, people always want something, but they don't always convey what they want. And then during the event, it's changing. And why don't we have this?
We have a saying, in our industry, that I have one time and one window to get it right. So it's not like I could sit there and say, you know what? We didn't get your dinner ready tonight for your 200 guests. How about we reschedule this in a couple of days? We had a couple of glitches, and, it's just not going to work out right now. In some professions, you can do that and be like, okay, we'll reschedule. We couldn't make the appointment, and we'll come back in 2 or 3 days and revisit it. I don't have that option. All right. My option is that this is my window to get cocktail hour out, to get dinner out, and execute it perfectly. And a lot of times we're given a lawn. or a grass or a backyard. So we don't have the facilities of being an in-house caterer where we can roll dish racks down a tiled floor or something like that. We're pushing stuff across grass. And sometimes we're not as close as we would like to be to where the actual venue's taking place. So that adds a lot of, stress to the factor. There's our one time to pull this off.
Right.
A lot of times we're setting up a kitchen, on premise to be able to make this happen, with our equipment. So, that's where the stress comes in. What if it rains? What if there's wind?
I was gonna say, we won't even talk about weather down here, because that's the other thing. People plan events outside and don't think about weather. You got to have that contingency plan sometimes.
You can almost count on it raining every day at 3:00. And, we try to say our nice months are ahead of us. But boy, then you get those cold fronts that move through.
Yeah.
And, and here you are in a tent outside and the wind's blowing 50 knots and it's 40 degrees out.
Exactly. You got to love the event industry. It's always changing and always something going on. But at the end of the day, they are the clients, so you need to make sure you take care of them, and whatever they're asking for, you need to make sure you deliver and have a great event. That they have planned.
To this day, I still get butterflies in my stomach when a bride walks down the aisle, and I know that whatever venue she chose, and she chose us to make this day, starting her, her life with her husband, and vice versa. That we're there doing that, and it's not like oh, here we are, it's another wedding, this and that. We are a very hands-on caterer. My wife and I are at all of our events. If we have 2 events in a day, we'll split ourselves up, so there's always an owner on premise. And to this day, to see that bride walk down the aisle, or pull off a big gala and just say, wow, at the end of the day, that was phenomenal that we did it. But it does take a team to do that. There is no I in team. So I do have one heck of a team behind me.
And that's important to have behind you. And I've worked, like I mentioned, I worked in a lot of events too. And it's, people think, oh, it's such a glamorous lifestyle. You get to do all these great events, but you're the one working them. So you really don't enjoy it until, like you said, until the end, when you can sit back and go, hey, we pulled that off.
Now with all these smartwatches and everything, I have servers and, staff that come up to me and go, I walked 7 miles today. I walked 8 miles today. And, years ago, it was just like, man, I was on my feet for 10 hours. And now they actually know how many miles or how many steps they put in. So it's funny to hear that at the end of the night. Yeah.
It's great, though. It's great. Now, you mentioned you had kids. Any hope for them to rise up and kind of take the reins eventually?
None whatsoever. They don't want anything to do with the business.
That's always the case, right?
We've tried, and I'll tell you what, they still work for us on some big events. If I need help or whatever, whether it be serving dinner, we've got to get, 200 or 400 plated meals out. They'll show up and help, and they'll bring friends with them, where we just need bodies to do stuff. But they're off on their own career paths. My oldest son owns a landscaping business, and he's very happy doing that. And my younger son just graduated from Fort Myers High, and he actually wants to go into the marine service industry. So he'll be starting marine school real soon, as far as handling outboard engines and all of that. And we kind of, when he told us he wanted to do that, we were, being in this area, in a big boating area, we were like, that's not a bad profession to get into right now. So
that's great. That's great. Like you said, everybody needs to be passionate about what they do and they love, and that's great. Follow your heart and your dreams, and that's
correct.
Great.
Yeah.
So I guess, the industry gets a lot of, I want to say, misconceptions or, negative connotations. What kind of things do you come across as far as, whether it's the events or the clients or things like that people maybe should know about, that they think they know, but they don't?
Well, I think one of the ones is that, we're just going to have a backyard wedding and keep it simple. And what they don't realize is that by having a backyard wedding or a gala or an event, everything needs to be brought in. The tent, the silverware, the china, the glassware, it's not on premise. And you have to pay somebody to do that. So when you think about this simple event we're going to have in our backyard or, at a venue, by the time you get around to it, sometimes it's, a lot cheaper to have it if it was actually at a venue that had everything on premise and the kitchen is there and all of that. So that's one misconception of that, if you watch that movie, Father of the Bride, when his daughter came up to him and said, "We're going to have a backyard wedding," and he's wearing, Steve Martin is wearing the an apron, and he's grilling hot dogs and hamburgers, and they're sitting around. And at the end of it, they've got this tent with chandeliers and Spo china and all. That's exactly what it's like,
right? That's the dream. And it's funny because, people think that, sometimes it's easier just to have an event someplace else, leave and go home.
Yes. And another one we get to is we always hear, we want to keep it simple with just some picky food. Well, picky food or hors d'oeuvres, we make almost everything ourselves. So let's just say that you're getting a skewer of, fresh mozzarella and tomato and basil. And we need 200 of them. I'm not buying that. I actually have to have my staff making 200 of those, along with maybe 4 or 5 other appetizers. Then we have to do with either a plated sit down or a buffet. And, or they just wanted the appetizer. And it's more expensive for us to do all these appetizers because of the labor costs than if we just do a buffet. Whereas you have, your salad to start, a protein, a starch, a veg, maybe a carving station or a live action station of a pasta wheel that we do. So the little picky foods that we just want to do sometimes are more expensive than what a actual buffet would be, because it's easier for me to make a tray of food for 50 people, that's one tray or whatever, or 2 trays, than it is for me to make 200 of these little hors d'oeuvres with, 3 or 4 staff having to put one component on something. So that's another misconception.
Yeah, people, you don't think about that until you actually have to do it.
And my wife guides them through that and just says, okay, listen, this is, if we're going to get into that, these are handmade, and that's where and then the menu evolves from there after, clients get to see. They might have a budget, they might not have a budget, and where my wife can, work her magic and make it, maybe 50-50 or 75-25 of how we worked in what they were looking for, and then how we ended up at the whole event for them. So.
There you go. That's great. That's great. So I know you mentioned 40 years, you've been around this industry. I'm sure it hasn't all been smooth sailing throughout. I'm sure you've probably endured some hardships or some struggles. Is there one that maybe, defined or helped you get to where you are today, or that you look back and you say, okay, that wasn't so bad. It helped me learn something.
I think in this industry, you always have to make sure you're thinking outside the box, because, you can have a couple of great months, and then you can have a couple of months that are not so great, and you're worried about making payroll, 1 week or whatever. So there are definitely, some, ups and downs. And not just the catering business, but the restaurant business, which is one of the, highest failure rates, of any business. Try to get a bank to lend you money just, to open up a restaurant or a catering business. And you're going to get a lot of no's, unless you have, personal, property or finance to back it up with. Right. So I've been through all of that, the busy parts, the slow parts. But I think the ones that really come into play which really challenged us, are very recent in these 40 years. And one would be COVID, because, when in March of COVID coming on, I had this feeling that, this is going to affect our industry in a negative way, because if they start closing everything and we cannot have more than 20 people or 8 people or 10 people, what happens to all of these venues, or these weddings and galas that we have booked? And that's exactly what happened. Everything canceled. Yeah. It happened at the end of March, around the 18th or 21st. And luckily we were at the tail end of our season. So we lost like April and May. And then our summers are our time off that we take in our business, because it's slow down here. It's hot. We're not catering outside. But then came September, October, November, and all those galas and all of that canceled. There was a lot of weddings canceling, because even though our state was open, to get, grandma and grandpa or your aunt and uncle to come from another state, they had to go back and quarantine for 2 weeks. And, one of the saving graces of thinking outside the box, I didn't know if we were going to be in business. And at that point I said, well, it's time to, we had a really great season. I was like, let's diversify here. I've always wanted to build a mobile kitchen. So we go to so many places that we're bringing in all the ovens and all of that and wheeling it in through a box truck and all that. What if I was able to pull up with a mobile kitchen? And that's what we did. And I was immediately, it was like right at the end of March that I started looking into this, and I secured, a place to build one. And we built this mobile kitchen, and I had it with the with the intent that if this tanks, the industry tanks, I could always go sell food on a corner somewhere out of this kitchen and make it a food truck. Well, knock wood, we never had to do that. And luckily our governor kept the state open, and we started seeing a lot of weddings coming to our barn venue because it's an open air barn venue. Once we open all the doors, we might not have been doing the 100, 150 person, 200 person weddings, but we were doing 60 and 80. It's keeping us busy. And then people were doing stuff outside and all of that. So things just started coming around. And, so at that point, it was, and the other thing too, is I cannot stress enough in this business is a lot of people load themselves with debt. They come into the business and they've leased, they've borrowed, and they don't own all their equipment, and that, they're renting space somewhere for their kitchen. And those are hard costs that hit you every month. And my wife and I have always had, if we cannot afford it, we don't buy it. Or we wait till we can afford it and then we buy it. And we've always kept our hard costs very low. So by doing that, we didn't have a big nut to crack every month. And then, like I said, things just started coming around, and, we are where we are now. Florida was open and people were coming down here for destination weddings and galas. And then the galas started coming back. And, so we went through, that was, a pretty scary year of not really knowing what was going to happen. And I'll give you one more that happened too. So there's actually two in a very short period of time. And I'm just praying that we maybe get a year or two here that nothing happens. But Hurricane Ian Ian came in last year at the end of September. Well, that's the beginning of our wedding and gala season. And I'm like, oh my God, we've got all this stuff on the books. And Fort Myers and Sanibel and Pine Island are wrecked,
Right.
And luckily we were out for about 2 or 3 weeks, and we were able to get things back open, and places, girls that had, people that had their dates booked, we could move them to other venues that were open, and we bounced right back on that one. But there was another one. I was like, oh my God, we just got off COVID and now we're at Ian, and what's going on to our business here? So
we don't want anything this year. Nothing.
I'm keeping my fingers crossed that we get, hurricane season still another month and a half or so, 2 months. Let's just get through this and have a couple of normal years here.
I hear you. Well, Mike, I appreciate you taking the time today. Is there anything else that you'd like to share about G3 Catering and that maybe people should know out there?
Well, I'll tell you, I'll give you one more thing, just a little bit about our business and our business model. And, my wife and I, we're really big about quality over quantity. We're not looking to see how many weddings or events we can do this weekend. We'd rather do one perfectly and just say that was, we did one perfect event and do 5, and all 5 are complaining. And we're really big on building relationships. After 28 or 29 years here in this town, I'm not a one and done caterer where I'm going to cater your wedding and I'm never going to see you again. Well, not only do I want to cater your wedding, I want to cater your baby shower, first Holy Communion, graduation from grammar school, high school. And I'm at the point in our lives where I have come full circle of not only catering like a first Holy Communion, but their graduation. I've catered their wedding. I've catered the baptism, birth of their child. And I've also catered their child's wedding.
Wow.
So, man, I'm getting old.
That's the way to do it.
You sit there and go, volumes. I remember your mom when she was this big, and now I'm catering, your wedding, and we sit here, and I'm like, oh my God, this is, I've been here a long time. So that's just great, a little bit about G3. We're really big on building relationships.
Yes, and that's great. That's more people should do that nowadays. Well, how would people go about getting a hold of you?
So our website is G3 Catering, .com. And you could also contact our phone numbers 239-887-0069. That'll put you in touch with my wife, Karen. And, our website, a lot of traffic through there. That's where we, a lot of our bookings come through social media. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram. So a lot of people check us out prior to even calling us. So we're constantly posting pictures of our food. We don't use any stock photos. It's all events that we're doing. And, that's how you would, that's how you would find us. So.
Hey, great. Hey, Mike, a pleasure getting to know you today. And I look forward to attending one of your events here soon.
Jim, it was a pleasure speaking with you today.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye-bye now.
Thank you for listening to the Good Neighbor Podcast Estero. To nominate your favorite local businesses to be featured on the show, go to gnpestero.com. That's gnpestero.com or call 239-296-2621.